They replaced you. And right now, they're realizing it was a catastrophic mistake. The wheels are falling off. The cracks are showing. Your replacement is drowning in what you made look effortless. Everyone who watched you leave is starting to see what they actually lost. This isn't revenge. This is divine order correcting itself. What you carry isn't transferable, and the universe is about to prove it in ways no one can deny. While they scramble to fix what's breaking, doors you never knocked on are opening for you. Watch what happens next. The first thing you need to understand is that they didn't just replace you as a person. They tried to replace your anointing, and that never works, ever. Anointing isn't a skill set. It's not a collection of abilities that can be taught, transferred, or replicated. Anointing is a divine grace, a spiritual empowerment, a supernatural enablement that comes from God and rests on specific people for specific purposes. When you were in that position, in that relationship, in that role, you didn't just bring your natural talents, you brought an anointing, a grace that made things work that shouldn't work, a favor that opened doors that shouldn't open, a presence that shifted atmospheres just by you being there. And the people who replaced you don't have that. They might be talented, they might be skilled, they might even be good at what they do on a natural level, but they don't carry the anointing you carry. And without anointing, everything that looked easy when you did it becomes difficult when they try it. Here's what's about to become visible. The projects that flowed when you led them are now stuck. The relationships that thrived under your influence are now struggling. The environments that felt alive when you were present now feel flat, mechanical, lifeless. The results that seemed effortless when you were involved now require excessive effort with minimal outcome. This isn't because you're special in an ego sense. This is because you were anointed for that specific assignment. And when anointing leaves, everything that was sustained by that anointing begins to deteriorate. Your replacement is about to experience frustration they can't explain. They're going to work harder than you ever worked, but see fewer results. They're going to follow all the same processes, but not get the same outcomes. They're going to try to replicate what you did, but find that something essential is missing, and that something is the anointing they don't carry. And the people who made the decision to replace you, they're starting to notice. They might not admit it yet. They might not say it out loud. But they're noticing that something is different. Something is off. Something that was working smoothly is now requiring constant troubleshooting. The anointing they thought they could transfer by transferring the position is revealing itself to be non-transferable. And that revelation is just beginning. The second thing that's about to become obvious is that your presence was covering cracks in the system that are now exposed without you. When you were there, your grace, your wisdom, your ability to navigate dysfunction and still produce results, it masked fundamental problems that no one wanted to address. You were the glue holding together something that should have been restructured. You were the oil keeping friction from becoming fire. You were the bridge connecting people who should have learned to communicate directly. You were compensating for leadership failures, system breakdowns, and relational dysfunction that everyone else ignored because you made it work anyway. But now you're gone, and all those cracks that were hidden by your presence are becoming visible. The dysfunction that was manageable when you were there to manage it is now spiraling. The conflicts that were resolved by your mediation are now escalating. The gaps that were filled by your competence are now gaping holes. And here's the uncomfortable truth that's about to surface. They didn't appreciate what you were doing because they didn't realize how much you were doing. They took for granted the 100 small things you handled that prevented major disasters. They didn't see the fires you put out before they spread. They didn't recognize the chaos you prevented just by being present and aware. Your replacement is discovering this now. They're being hit with problems they didn't know existed because those problems never reached crisis level when you were there. They're overwhelmed by the actual reality of what the role requires because you made it look easy. And the organization, the relationship, the system, whatever structure you are part of, is starting to realize that you weren't just a role filler. You were a problem solver, a stabilizer, a person whose very presence maintained order that's now visibly absent. This isn't about ego or validation. This is about truth becoming undeniable. The cracks are showing, and they're showing because the grace that covered them is no longer present. Let's address this directly. Your replacement is already failing. They might not admit it publicly. They might be performing confidence to save face. They might even be getting credit for things they're barely holding together. But privately, behind closed doors, in their own thoughts, they know. They know they can't do what you did. They know they're struggling where you excelled. They know they're being exposed in areas where you were strong. And that knowledge is creating stress, insecurity, and desperation that's going to become visible soon if it hasn't already. Here's what's happening that you can't see. Your replacement is working twice as hard to achieve half the results you achieved. They're staying late, showing up early, putting in excessive effort, and still falling short. They're dealing with complaints they don't know how to handle. They're facing challenges they don't have the wisdom to navigate. They're experiencing resistance from people who worked smoothly with you. And it's not because they're incompetent. It might not even be because they're the wrong person for the role in general. It's because they're the wrong person for the role right now, in this context, with these specific needs that required your specific anointing. But pride won't let them admit it. Fear won't let them acknowledge it. So they're performing, they're pretending, they're projecting confidence while privately drowning. And that performance is exhausting them in ways that will eventually become undeniable. The failure isn't just in the results, though those will become visible soon enough. The failure is in the fit. They're trying to fill a space that was shaped by your specific calling, and they don't fit. It's like trying to force the wrong puzzle piece into a spot clearly cut for a different shape. And here's what you need to know. This isn't your concern anymore. You don't need to watch their failure. You don't need to track their struggle. You don't need to monitor their mistakes. Their failure is between them and the assignment they try to step into without the anointing to sustain it. Your job is to focus on where you're going next, not on how they're handling where you've been. Because while they're failing to maintain what you built, you're being positioned for something they could never handle even on their best day. Now let's talk about the people who made the decision to replace you. The leaders, the partners, the friends, whoever chose the replacement over you. They're experiencing something they didn't expect and might not voice openly. Regret. Not always the admitting kind of regret. Not necessarily the apologizing kind, but the internal, nagging, increasingly undeniable kind of regret that shows up as second-guessing, as frustration with the replacement, as nostalgia for how things used to be when you were there. They're noticing the difference. The meetings that used to be productive are now draining. The projects that used to flow are now stuck. The team dynamics that used to work are now tense. The environment that used to feel energized now feels heavy. And whether they admit it or not, they know when the shift happened, when you left and someone else took your place. Here's what's happening in their private thoughts. They're comparing. They told themselves the replacement was just as good, maybe better in some ways. They convinced themselves that your departure was fine, that the transition would be smooth, that nothing essential would be lost. But now they're seeing that wasn't true. And every time the replacement struggles with something you handled easily, every time something breaks that you used to maintain, every time they have to deal with a problem you used to prevent, they think of you. Not always fondly, sometimes with frustration at themselves for not recognizing your value when they had you. This regret will manifest in different ways. Some might reach out, trying to reconnect, asking how you're doing, testing whether you'd consider coming back. Some might speak positively about you to others, suddenly remembering all your strengths, now that they're dealing with your replacement's weaknesses. Some might simply carry the regret silently, unwilling to admit their mistake but unable to ignore the consequences. But here's what's critical. Their regret is not your responsibility to resolve. You don't owe them a return. You don't owe them reassurance. You don't owe them the satisfaction of knowing they're missed or the validation of being told you'd come back if asked. Their regret is part of their lesson. The lesson about recognizing anointing when it's present instead of only appreciating it when it's gone. And that's a lesson they need to learn fully without you rescuing them from the discomfort of it. While all of this is happening, while your replacement struggles, while cracks show, while regret sets in, something else is happening that's far more important. Doors you didn't knock on are opening for you. This is the part most people miss because they're too focused on watching what's happening where they left. But the universe doesn't remove you from one place without positioning you for another. Heaven doesn't allow you to be pushed out without orchestrating your push forward. You're about to experience opportunities you didn't apply for, invitations to spaces you didn't seek, connections with people you didn't pursue, resources showing up for ventures you just started thinking about. It's going to feel surreal, like the universe is suddenly conspiring in your favor after feeling like it forgot about you. But this isn't sudden. This has been building while you were being removed from where you no longer belonged. While they were replacing you, heaven was positioning you. While they were filling your old space, the universe was creating new space specifically designed for who you've become. And here's the beautiful part. These new opportunities fit you better than the old ones ever did. They align with your growth. They honor your evolution. They recognize your value in ways the old space never could. These aren't consolation prizes. These are upgrades. The position you're moving into is higher than the one you left. The relationship you're building is healthier than the one that ended. The platform you're being given is bigger than the stage you were removed from. The assignment you're stepping into is more aligned with your calling than the role you were pushed out of. But you would never have pursued these opportunities if you were still comfortable where you were. You would never have been available for what's opening if you were still trying to maintain what was closing. Your removal wasn't rejection. It was redirection towards something better that you couldn't see yet. So while they're trying to make your replacement work, you're walking into alignment that doesn't require effort, into favor that doesn't require convincing, into spaces that don't require you to shrink, perform, or prove yourself. The doors opening for you didn't require you to knock because heaven opened them from the other side specifically for you. And when you walk through them, you're going to understand with perfect clarity why you had to be removed from where you were. There's a powerful truth being revealed right now through your absence. People rarely understand what they have until they lose it. And your absence is currently teaching everyone who took you for granted exactly what your presence was worth. This lesson isn't one you're teaching intentionally. You're not withholding yourself to make a point. You're not staying away to punish anyone. You're simply gone, pursuing your new path, building your new life, focusing on your new assignment. And your absence itself is the teacher. The value you brought is becoming obvious precisely because it's no longer there. The grace you carried is being missed because its effects are no longer felt. The wisdom you offered is being sought because the problems you used to solve are now unsolved. The stability you provided is being longed for because the chaos you used to calm is now unmanaged. And here's what's profound about this. You're not diminished by being gone. Your value doesn't decrease because they didn't appreciate it. In fact, your worth is being proven by what's falling apart without you. Every struggle they're facing now validates what you were doing that they didn't see. Every problem that's surfacing confirms what you were handling that they didn't acknowledge. This isn't about them suffering so you can feel better. This is about truth being revealed so everyone involved can learn what they need to learn. They need to learn to recognize anointing when it's present. They need to learn to honor calling over convenience. They need to learn that some people aren't replaceable because what they carry is unique, specific, and divinely assigned. And you need to learn that your value doesn't require their recognition to be real. You need to learn that being pushed out of spaces that don't honor you is protection, not rejection. You need to learn that your worth is inherent in who you are and what you carry, not in who appreciates it. Your absence is a teacher. Let it teach them what it needs to teach them. And let it teach you what you need to learn about your own value so you never again settle for spaces that require you to diminish yourself to fit. Now we come to the part that changes everything. Your comeback. Not back to where you were. That would be a step backward. But a comeback to visibility, to influence, to impact, in a completely new and elevated capacity. They thought your removal was the end of your story. They thought pushing you aside meant they wouldn't have to deal with you anymore. They thought replacing you meant you'd fade into irrelevance while they continued on without you. They were wrong. What's about to happen is a comeback they won't see coming because it's not happening in their space. It's happening in a bigger space, a more aligned space, a space where your anointing is recognized, your calling is honored, and your value is celebrated, not tolerated. You're about to emerge in ways that make your old position look small. You're about to step into influence that makes your old role look like preparation, not destination. You're about to build something that makes what you left behind look like a starting point, not a pinnacle. And when they see it, and they will see it because favor doesn't hide, they're going to realize what they actually lost, not the role filler they thought you were, not the easily replaceable person they treated you as, but the carrier of an anointing they couldn't recognize, a calling they couldn't appreciate, a grace they took for granted. But here's what's important. Your comeback isn't for them. It's not to prove anything to them. It's not to make them regret their decision, though they will. Your comeback is for you. It's the universe saying, you were never meant to stay small in spaces that couldn't see you. You were always meant for this. Your comeback is also for the people who are supposed to benefit from your anointing in this next season, the ones who are waiting for exactly what you carry, the ones who will recognize it immediately, the ones who will honor it properly. The comeback is already in motion. You're already being positioned. The pieces are already moving into place. And when it all comes together, when you step into the fullness of what's been prepared for you, your replacement will just be settling into the reality that they can't do what you did. That's not vengeance. That's just truth. That's just what happens when someone tries to replace what was irreplaceable all along. The final truth you need to understand is this. The chapter where they replaced you is closed. Completely, definitively, permanently closed. And no matter what happens next, no matter how much they struggle, no matter how much they regret, no matter how much they want you back, you cannot return to what's finished. This is critical because there will be temptation to return, either because they ask, because you feel sorry for them, because you miss aspects of what you had, or because fear makes you doubt whether what's ahead is better than what's behind. But going back would be disobedience. Going back would be stepping out of divine positioning to re-enter human convenience. Going back would be choosing the familiar over the destined. And that's not an option for someone with your calling. The door closed behind you for a reason. The bridge burned for a purpose. The replacement happened to free you, not to hurt you. And now that you're free, now that you're being repositioned, now that new doors are opening, you cannot afford to turn around. Lot's wife looked back and became a pillar of salt, not because looking back was casual curiosity, but because looking back revealed where her heart still was. And when your heart is still in what you're supposed to be leaving, you can't move forward into what you're supposed to be entering. They tried to replace you. They failed, even if they don't know it yet. And you're being elevated to something they could never offer you. That's the story. That's the testimony. That's the truth. Don't rewrite it by returning to what's finished. Don't complicate it by reopening what's closed. Don't delay it by looking back at what you're meant to move forward from. This chapter is closed. The next chapter is opening, and everything you need is ahead of you, not behind you. So here you are, chosen one. Understanding now that what felt like rejection was actually redirection. What looked like replacement was actually removal from somewhere you no longer belonged, so you could be positioned for where you're actually called. They tried to replace you, and in trying, they revealed that what you carry isn't replaceable. They demonstrated that anointing isn't transferable. They proved that some roles aren't about the position, they're about the person carrying the assignment. And now you get to watch what happens next, not from a place of bitterness or vindication, but from a place of understanding and growth. Watch how systems struggle without the grace that sustained them. Watch how replacements fail to fill spaces shaped by specific callings. Watch how regret settles in when people realize what they lost. But more importantly, watch what happens to you. Watch how doors open that you didn't knock on. Watch how opportunities appear that you didn't seek. Watch how you rise to levels you couldn't have reached if you'd stayed where they tried to keep you. Watch how your absence teaches them what your presence was worth. Watch how your elevation proves that being pushed out was actually being pushed up. Watch how your comeback, not to them, but to yourself, to your calling, to your purpose, becomes undeniable evidence that you were never replaceable at all. They tried to replace you, but replacement only works with things that are generic, duplicatable, ordinary. And what you carry is none of those things. What you carry is unique, specific, divine. And that becomes obvious the moment someone tries to fill your space and realizes the space was never the source. You were. So watch what happens next. With peace, with confidence, with certainty that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Because the universe doesn't make mistakes when it removes chosen ones from where they no longer belong. It's always positioning, always elevating, always preparing for the next chapter that's better than the last. They tried to replace you. Now watch what happens next, to them and to you. And when it all plays out, you'll understand with perfect clarity why you had to be removed from where you were to be positioned for where you're going. Your story isn't over. It's just finally beginning to honor who you actually are. Watch what happens next, Chosen One. It's going to be better than you imagined.